Part 91. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 910. Latest website. VCDs and televisions are not the main business of these companies here. They mainly make products such as pagers and mobile phones, but they can also see how strong the appeal of Tongpala supported by Lu Feng. Guangming, this company must die. Not only the electronics industry was in trouble, but the street gangsters were also in trouble. Rich brother gave out rewards to 5 outstanding gangsters, each with an apartment and a car, and announced to the public that a group of them would be selected every year. Outstanding and hard-working bastards will be given heavy rewards, and those who dare to do things and want to do things will be promoted. There is a brother who is a gangster. He has been around for 5 or 6 years and is cleaner than his face. However, he became the deputy manager not long after working with the rich brother. Now he is in charge of dozens of people, which makes him envious. When Pike heard about this, he was so angry that he couldn't even eat. Whenever he came out to hang out, the elder brother would be involved. Since it was a money competition, he had a lot of money. He immediately announced that each of the younger brothers would be given 2,000 Thai baht, and selected a few capable men, also want to reward a house and a luxury car. But after a little calculation, my heart began to hurt. No matter how rich his family background was, it couldn't be richer than Lu Feng. Pike couldn't understand why the rich man had so much money and didn't stay enough in his own country, so he came here to argue with him. The two completely unrelated industries are in a state of turmoil. Countless people have asked their brothers around them if they want to work under the rich man for a couple of days. At around 12 o'clock at noon, everyone in Zhatai had already arrived. Lu Feng was still missing. Sitting there was a man in his 40s with a Chinese character face who looked a bit European and American. He slapped the table angrily. He yelled, "This is too much of a bully. He is nothing but bullshit. Are you asking us to wait here?" The person speaking was none other than Vera, the person in charge of Toshiba in Thailand. "Calm down and wait a few minutes. If you don't come, we'll have a dinner," the president of the Panasonic branch next to him persuaded. Before the words could be finished, the private room door was pushed open by the waiter, and Lu Feng walked in with Kevin. He saw so many people present, most of them were Thais, and there were also 1 or 2 foreign faces among them. "I'm sorry to keep everyone waiting." Lu Feng stepped towards the empty seat and sat down. Looking at everyone present, he said unabashedly, "The first batch of stores opened today. The sales are really good, so there was a little delay. Time. By the way, are you still doing promotional activities?" When Chatai heard this, the tendons on his forehead collapsed. This was a face-to-face provocation. "Don't worry, I will keep doing it," Chatapi said with a smile. "I don't think so. I know what Nabshi. He doesn't have great ambitions. After we have established a firm foothold in the market here, he won't be able to recruit anyone in the short term. We can only plan long-term strategies." Lu Feng picked up the juice in front of him and drank it. After taking a sip, he looked at the others and said, "To tell you the truth, I have dealt with all these brands of tables in China, and they were beaten badly by me." Vera became a little unhappy and said, "This is Thailand." "I know, so what?" Lu Feng leaned on the chair, glanced around, spread his hands and said, "So what, everyone, did you take advantage? Don't talk about you, just the gang from the head office. If the old man gets it here, what can he do to me?" "You are so arrogant," Shatai gritted his teeth. "Yes, is arrogance illegal?" Lu Feng turned his head and stared at him, half smiling and said, "This is in Thailand. If we were in China, I would let you see what arrogance is. That's such a pity. We are in Thailand now. Stop being so humming arrogant. I called you here today just to give you a piece of advice." Shatai looked gloomy and stared at Lu Feng and said, "Close all the stores obediently. Don't let me take the trouble, or you can think of the consequences yourself. The atmosphere was immediately tense. Everyone stared at Lu Feng with unkind expressions, as if they were going to fight in the next second. If he had just arrived, Lu Feng would definitely be afraid of encountering such a situation, but now he has nothing to fear, and instead finds it a bit funny. Really? I'm so scared. If I won't withdraw, what will you do? Find those people to threaten me again? You threaten me and give it a try, Lu Feng said indifferently. I tell everyone here, since I hear you go, your good days are over. I shouldn't have come for today's meal. You are just the heads of a group of subordinate companies, but I am here to give you enough face. I want to show you face. You know. Well. Several Thai people present couldn't hold back. On their own territory, were they said like this? Vera stood up first and shouted, "Who do you think you are? You are yelling here, believe it or not, I will call and ask someone to break your legs." "Oh, I really don't believe it." "Call me and take a look." Lu Feng looked at him and said, "Toshiba has a good international influence now. Does your company know that you are so arrogant? Don't ruin the future of the company. You don't pay enough attention to those who play on the road, and you are not good at business competition. You only join forces to monopolize the market, which is simply a shame for capital." The people present were all powerful people in the local branch. They had never experienced such humiliation. They all sat there and stared at Lu Feng as if they wanted to eat people. "You set the rules. I play according to your game rules. Now that I can't play the game, I just treat you to dinner. How can it be such a simple thing?" Lu Feng stood up and glanced at everyone present, and said in a deep voice, "To be honest, you are really a bunch of trash." After Lu Feng finished speaking, he turned around and walked away. Vera couldn't bear it anymore. She grabbed the cup in front of her and threw it at Lu Feng. She didn't hit anyone and hit the wall directly. Lu Feng never looked back from the beginning to the end. After leaving the hotel, Kevin whispered, "Please pay attention to your safety these days. Tell the security company to keep an eye on our store recently to avoid being smashed." Lu Feng walked out, thought for a while and said, "Judging from their state, they probably didn't report it, and now they plan to take matters into their own hands." Pressed down. "This can be considered a good thing," Kevin muttered. After Lu Feng left, everyone in the private room had no intention of eating. The atmosphere was so serious that they seemed to be suffocating. Shatai lit a cigarette, threw the lighter on the table, looked at Vera opposite, and said, It's not okay to kill the person, but it's still okay to let him have a longer memory. I think this matter needs to be dealt with both hands. It is certain to find someone to deal with him, but the competition in the market must continue. Didn't he launch at Tongpala? Then we will expose this lie for him." Vera said viciously. Everyone present nodded silently, obviously agreeing with Vera's words. Watanabe was quite happy during this period. He often contacted people on Wall Street and began to understand the situation at Goldman Sachs. The only person who made him feel uneasy was Lu Feng. A few days ago, Eisen chatted with him on the phone and told him what happened at the International Summit. The Schroeder's group was almost a joke. This incident was all the result of Watanabe. Watanabe was a little embarrassed when he agreed, because he didn't know what Lu Feng was doing recently. He asked Shatai several times, and they all said that the Thai market was safe and sound, and sales were rising steadily. As for whether Lu Feng, Kevin, and others were sure leaving has always been vague. Watanabe couldn't wait any longer, so he decided to call and ask. When he called, the secretary picked up the phone and told Watanabe that Shatai was not there, and would inform him as soon as he came back. Tell him, he can never deal with people like Lu Feng. If Lu Feng really hasn't left, report him as soon as possible. There was already a hint of anger in Watanabe's voice. Naturally, the person on the other end of the phone said respectfully that he would definitely pass it on. In the afternoon, Shatai returned to the company and his secretary told him about the incident. He was indescribably angry. He was a good guy in his 30s and came from a prestigious university, so he couldn't deal with him. What's more, now there are Vera and others standing on his side. At noon, Lu Feng pointed at him and called him a waste, and now he still has to be looked down upon by Watanabe. Whoever is put on it can bear it? I don't have that ability. Humph. He, then just wait and see. There are many ways to deal with Lu Feng. Shatai already felt that this matter was not a business matter, but his own face thing. Throughout the day, the number of registrations for Regal Security Company soared to more than 1,000 people, many of whom were Pike's subordinates. Lu Feng didn't care about the security company's affairs. He had too many problems to face. The most important thing now was Maha's dinner tonight. Once this is done, nothing will be a problem. In one afternoon, Sarami changed several sets of makeup, making her look more refined. Now she has her own makeup artist and costumer. Standing in front of the mirror, Sarami looked at herself so beautiful, with a smile on her face. Since she has chosen this path, she must move forward no matter how difficult it is. Maybe she, a girl in her early 20s, could not imagine the pleasures among the rich and powerful, and the fierce battles there were beyond her control. In the evening, the car had stopped at the door of the hotel. Under the protection of the bodyguard, he got into the car and sped towards the manor. Sampa stood at the door of his manor tonight to greet the distinguished guests. He was definitely considered a top-level businessman in Thailand, but at most he was just a businessman. Being able to invite Maha tonight was definitely a status symbol. Lu Feng will be here in a while. You know how to chat with Sarami for a while, Songpa said to Shasha beside him. Don't worry, they are all women, we will definitely be able to chat, Shasha murmured in a low voice. Night has just fallen here in the United States. Kelly's has just gone to work in the morning. She has tried to contact Lu Feng countless times, but this man just doesn't answer her phone. Even if you want to threaten him, you can't do it. This person can basically be considered uncoupled. But Kelly's had put in so much effort and really didn't want to see her efforts go to waste. She was so angry that she sometimes wanted to report it to the police and directly seal up Lu Feng's company. It's a pity that she can't report it to the police. She invested so much, but was taken advantage of by Lu Feng. This is an absolute dereliction of duty, and even her leader can't protect her. Continue to contact me and tell him to answer the phone if he doesn't want to die. Khalees was already a little crazy. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 911. Latest website. In front of the manor, as soon as Lu Feng's car stopped, several parking guys ran over and opened the door. Lu Feng stepped out and Songpa had already walked over. Mr. Lu, if you can come, my place is really full of glory. Songpa smiled with wrinkles on his face and put his arms around Lu Feng and gave him a bear hug. People who didn't know it thought they had such a good friendship, but it was completely different from the last time they met. Shasha walked up to Sarami, took her hand and praised her beauty, holding hands, as intimate as sisters. I am here today just waiting for you, this distinguished guest. Mr. Lu can achieve his current achievements at such a young age. He is definitely unparalleled in the world. Songpa kept praising him. In this place in Thailand, I have to rely on you, brother. It was because I didn't have contact information before. Otherwise, if your brother takes action, my affairs here will still be a big deal, Lu Feng said with a smile. It's a pity. I was careless because I left in a hurry. Songpa said to Lu Feng, I'll tell you why. It's my fault. But I think if there is any need in the future, it will be fine with me, Lu Feng said to him. That's for sure. Songpa stopped talking about this topic and made a gesture of invitation, please come in. Surrounded by a crowd of people, the four of them walked inside. Compared with the last hot spring manor, this manor was not so luxurious and was just an ordinary manor. There were already many people inside, and as soon as he walked in, someone greeted Lu Feng. Even though he didn't know him, he still had a smile on his face, and he even said a few words of greeting to Sarami. In just a few days, Sarami felt the most profound changes in such earth-shaking changes. She knew why these people smiled at her, and she also understood that if she did not perform well and lost Maha's love, these smiles would disappear in an instant. I feel even more nervous about meeting Maha soon. A group of people were drinking and chatting, nothing more than those things, business cooperation, which female star is good looking, and how. Although the words are not vulgar, the topic is very vulgar. Shasha has been accompanying Sarami all the time, and there are already a bunch of female relatives around her. From time to time, there is a burst of giggles, and she seems quite happy. At first, Sarami was afraid that she would not have a word with them, and would be rude or something. As everyone knows, when you are strong enough, they will only talk about your words. If you are careless and rude, they will praise you for your true temperament. If you like to praise others, they will say you have high emotional intelligence. If you are reticent and unsociable, just say that you are not angry and are powerful. People have two mouths, they can damage them no matter how much they want to damage them, and they can praise them no matter how much they want to praise them. Mr. Liu, the prince has been very obsessed with Sarami recently, but I think you don't know much about the situation here. It's better for us to cooperate. Her matter is basically stable, Songpa said very bluntly. He openly proposed cooperation. Oh, brother, do you think so highly of me? Lu Feng took a sip of red wine and said, since you are so honest, I would like to hear how we can cooperate. There are many women around Maha. If you don't have some tricks, Maha will not remember her within half a month. If you want to stay with her for a long time, you still need some tricks. Maha nodded. Holding a cigar, he looked at Lu Feng and said, I have this ability, and I also know that if Sarami's position is stable, your branch here will also be stable, and Thailand will become as strong a market as you have in China. Then why did you help me? Lu Feng looked at him and wondered. Of course I also need some support, such as rubber export tariffs, state support, merging cultivated land into rubber plantations, etc., all of which require people's approval. Sampa puffed out a puff of smoke and said, I have been creating. It's a pity that this kind of opportunity comes from the wrong person. Since you've already got it, why don't we cooperate? Lu Feng planted a tree, and now it was time to pick the fruit. He ran over. Even though Lu Feng felt 10,000 reluctances, he couldn't refuse at this moment. Jia Feng has too many opponents here, so Songpa will be happy to help, but if he uses some tricks, he will definitely be the best. Okay, brother has already spoken, I have nothing to say. Lu Feng raised his wine glass and took a sip. Mr. Lu, I can understand if you feel uncomfortable. In this way, you can choose any beauties here tonight. Even if you like Sasha, I can cut you off. Songpa seemed to have made a lot of determination. Even Sasha can give way. Cough cough cough. Lu Feng choked on his drink and waved his hands repeatedly, you can keep it for yourself. I really don't have the hobby of winning people's love. You'd better tell me how to do it and what contribution you can make. The translator on the side couldn't help laughing and hurriedly helped Lu Feng wipe away his drink. Simple, I will have a senior monk here tonight. He is quite authoritative in Thailand. Then he will show Maha's face, and also show Sarami's face, so that she can become Maha's destined purple star. As long as with her by his side, Maha will definitely ascend to the throne, and since Sarami has you and me behind him, he has to think carefully, and don't think that if the royal family makes him the crown prince, he will really be able to secure the throne. Songpa took a sip of red wine, lowered his voice and continued, the current situation is very complicated. He needs someone to support him, and he also needs to be powerful in the army and needs money. Everyone is not a fool. If he goes up, then it's time to repay us. Lu Feng nodded and said, I understand. In that case, I'll bother you, brother. Brother, it's easy to talk. When I first met you on Wall Street, I thought we two were very compatible. Now that I see it, it's true. Sampa laughed, picked up the wine glasses, clinked them and said, cheers. As the number of people gradually increased, the atmosphere at the scene became more intense, and there was a lot of laughter and laughter. Occasionally, some people were impatient, and they lost track of where they were laughing with the girl next to them. A staff member came over and whispered something into Songpa's ear. Songpa stood up and said to Lu Feng, the prince is here. Let's go and greet him together. Everyone walked outside, and after waiting for a few minutes, a car stopped at the door. The doorman opened the door and knelt on the ground. Everyone else knelt on the ground. Only Lu Feng stood there, looking a little embarrassed. Very embarrassing. As for making Lu Feng kneel and lie on the ground, there was absolutely no way he could do it. Okay, we're all here to play, get up. Maha glanced at Lu Feng first, then set his sights on Sarami, with a smile on his face unconsciously, and asked, Sila miss me, how are you these days? It's very good. I still want to thank you for your help to my family. I, a man, can't repay you. When the sentence came, she didn't know how long she had been rehearsing it, but she still lowered her head and stuttered slightly. It's okay. I've always been intolerant of unfair things. His Royal Highness the Prince has a compassionate heart and has always drawn a sword to help when encountering difficulties. I particularly admire him, and he is also an example for me to learn from. Songpa said from the side, but an ordinary person like me cannot compare. Ha 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 ha, it's just a trivial matter, let's go in first. Please come in. Songpa bowed his waist and looked extremely respectful. No one could have imagined that he was so respectful and had been studying how to tie him up with Lu Feng 10 minutes ago. After entering, a group of people gathered around and exchanged pleasantries. After being polite for about 10 minutes, Songpa went upstairs with several important people. In a private room upstairs, they were sitting and chatting, which was nothing more than flattery. Maha kept his eyes on Sarami, saw her standing not far away, and said, You sit here. This beauty is a perfect match for you at first glance. It's a perfect match, but compared to my sister, it's still a little worse. My cousin happened to be here today, so I asked her to come up. Huh, Songpa spoke up and said, Let's chat here for a while, cousin, let's forget about it, not to mention that today we mainly ask Master Songpai to pray for His Highness the Prince. The boss who suggested that his cousin come over looked a little unhappy and looked at Songpa with great dissatisfaction. Mahala held Sarami's hand and chatted in a low voice. Seeing that he could no longer hold it in any longer, Songpa was extraordinarily sensible and coughed and said, His Royal Highness, he came all the way in the car and was quite tired. We don't want to go there. Sorry for bothering you, let him rest for a while, we'll go down first. Everyone stood up and left the private room, leaving only Sarami and Maha. After going downstairs, the night was bright and the sky was filled with stars and moon. Songpa said to Lu Feng beside him, This is a good day for stargazing. Yes, Lu Feng looked at the sky, maybe everything was doomed. 10 minutes later, Songpa went to meet Master Songpai. When Sarami had a relationship with Songpa, Lu Feng no longer had to worry about anything. He didn't know how long he had been preparing for this, but he just lacked one person. Just the right person. Master Songpai is a well-known eminent monk in the local area. He has a round figure, wears a monk's robe, and has a somewhat festive face. When they meet, he first preaches the Dharma. I wonder where your Royal Highness is now, Songpai asked. I'm busy right now. I'll take a bath and change my clothes later. I'll come soon. Master, Please take a seat first, Songpa said politely. After waiting for more than an hour, Maha went downstairs, looking refreshed. He chose a spacious place, set everything up, and officially started. Lu Feng looked left and right to see that Sarami was still not coming down, and he was a little anxious. Songpa was even more anxious and asked the people around him, "Where is she? My body aches and I can't come down. Find someone to hold me up, and I have to take him down," Songpa ordered in a low voice, with a hint of viciousness in his words. Such an important part, if she were absent, everything would be meaningless. A few minutes later, Sarami walked down with the support of two waitresses. Songpai raised his head and took a look. Songpa pursed his lips quietly. Songpai immediately frowned and stared at Sarami for a long time. Who is this woman? What's wrong? Songpa turned back and glanced at Sarami. You have a noble face. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 912. Latest website. Looks noble? Everyone present was stunned, and several of them had already realized what was going on tonight. Come here, Songpai waved to Sarami. Sarami knelt down in front of him, clasping his hands and looking at the sky. After a long time of tossing on the scene, Songpai opened his eyes and said to the crowd, "Everyone, spread out." Everyone stayed far away. Songpai whispered to Sarami and Maha for a while. Maha looked back at Sarami from time to time. He is not a fool. Sarami has a noble appearance. This is what people say. Some things are used to fool the people at the bottom. He is not so superstitious about these things. However, he knew that Songpa was the one who found Songpa, and she was from Lu Feng. In recent days, he had been checking up on Lu Feng's details, and he did not dare to neglect this person. If Jiafeng Electronics really if Lu Feng has a big sky in the world, then Lu Feng's interpersonal relationships in the world must not be comparable to ordinary people. He is even more important than Sampra. It's just a woman, just keep it, it won't cost you much. A long time later, Maha knelt down in front of Master Songpai with his hands clasped. The ceremony was considered completed. Maha did not take Sarami away that day. He held her hand throughout the whole process, looking quite intimate. At 11 o'clock in the evening, a group of people stood at the door to say goodbye. The car left. Lu Feng looked at Songpa and whispered, "What's going on? Why didn't you take the person away? You thought it was you." "I took him back as soon as he was told. It will probably take some time." "Don't worry," Songpa gave Lu Feng a reassuring look. "In that case, I will go back first. There are still things to deal with tomorrow. By the way, if you need help with some things, it's okay to ask me, right?" Lu Feng asked. "Ha ha ha ha," Songpa smiled slightly awkwardly and said, "If I can help, of course I will." Lu Feng received such an answer. Although he was not satisfied, he nodded with a smile, said good, and got into the car with Sarami. On the way back, Sarami looked in pain, curled up on the seat and said, "It hurts. Bear with it a little longer, and arrange for someone to treat your inflammation and pain when you get back." The next day, Guangming Electronics' second batch of stores opened. Relying on its low prices, excellent products, and emotional consumption, Guangming Electronics became unparalleled for a while, and some media even began to promote reports of boycotting foreign-invested products. Shatai and Vera couldn't sit still when they saw this situation. Shatai immediately contacted Muzha and said in one sentence, "The things they did before were not handled smoothly. If they are not handled cleanly, the money behind them will be lost. No points." After listening to the voice on the phone, Muja sat up and said solemnly with a bit of solemnity on his unshaven face, "Is he still there? The current Guangming Electronics was created by him. If you don't get it right, don't even think about getting money from me." Shatai hung up the phone immediately after finishing speaking. Although the scumbag has white gloves, he always does things neatly when he goes out to do things by himself. After all, only if he does well can he get repeat customers. But I didn't expect that for the first time, I would fall over on Lu Feng. Just go ahead and smash it again. On the other hand, Muja was straightforward. He picked up the phone and called Pike directly. This kind of thing could be handled by a gangster like Pike. The phone was connected, and Muja ordered the matter. It was originally a small matter, but Pike hesitated on the phone and said, "Brother, it was absolutely fine for you to order this matter some time ago, but now it's a bit difficult. Can't you handle these things?" Muja was a little unhappy. "I have lost a lot of people under my command recently. You don't know, but some rich guy came out and half of the people in the world have taken refuge with him. I don't dare to move at all now, for fear that the people under my command will run away for the first time." Parker felt that there was still competitive pressure when he came out to hang out. In the past, he would hit and scold his younger brother, but now he can no longer do it and has to be coaxed. What the hell can you do all day long? Muja couldn't understand. It was a miracle that a foreigner could live in his land for so long. Spend some money and find someone to smash it with. After Muja finished speaking, he smashed the phone down and lit a cigarette. He felt an indescribable frustration. At the same time, Shatai and other heads of foreign-funded branches also began to take action. The media was overwhelmingly publicizing Tongpala, who had falsified his academic qualifications and experience. The media in Thailand are a little busy. The same newspaper has a front-page headline that says the patriotic entrepreneur Thongpala established a brand with daily sales exceeding 1 billion. On the other side, the headline reads Shenpsa Thongpala, a patriotic enterprise is a good business. For a while, the people were a little schizophrenic and didn't know who to believe. At 9 o'clock in the morning, before Lu Feng woke up, he was woken up by a rapid knock on the door. He opened the door and saw the translator, and asked, "What's wrong?" There was a problem with today's publicity. Tongpala's identity was revealed and published in the media. Now the situation is very unfavorable to us. Lu Feng didn't seem surprised when he heard the news. He had expected this after eating with Shatai and his group that day, and he also knew that the store would be smashed next. "I understand, see you in the conference room later," Lu Feng said calmly, closed the door and started to wash up. At 9:30, in the conference room, Lu Feng looked at a dozen senior executives and said, "Have you done any counterattack in terms of publicity? We have issued a statement to the outside world through all our current channels and pursued legal responsibility." "No other actions have been taken yet," Kevin replied. "The official side can just give a response, speak out as a third party, preferably a more influential local businessman, and say that this is a counterattack against patriotic enterprises, and that it is those evil-minded people who fabricated these things." Frame Tongpala. After Lu Feng finished speaking, he looked at Tongpala and said, "Find the TV station with the highest ratings to do an interview with you, just to talk about this matter. Remember, you must act very aggrieved and want to do it wholeheartedly. It's a good thing. It turned out that the sales have been good these days. It's like calling and threatening you. Now that this happened, you are very sad, but you will persevere. Remember, you must cry, especially when you feel wronged. Understand?" Tongpala nodded stiffly. This acting skill seemed to be more demanding. "From now on, when you encounter this kind of thing, don't criticize your competitors. As long as you show a bit of fierceness, the audience will feel uncomfortable. Be sure to show innocence and do nothing except cry and complain. People will be sympathetic. Weak, and what we have to do is to play this week. Lu Feng looked at Kevin and said, "Do you understand?" Hearing what Lu Feng said, Kevin fell to the ground in admiration. He cupped his fists and said, "I am convinced of you this time. Don't give in yet, and prepare all the stores to prevent them from being smashed. I'll call the security company soon and arrange for people to watch." Lu Feng said solemnly, "With this little brain, I can use it as my hand. How dare you play with me when there are cards in it?" Shatai never dreamed that his 3-axe was guessed by Lu Feng with his toes. After eating, Lu Feng stared in confusion for a while. Khalees's phone calls kept urging him, and the assistant came several times. Lu Feng was also annoyed and couldn't bear it. Khalees's threat should still be taken to heart. He answered the phone and said, "Hello, this is Lu Feng." "Mr. Lu, you've been very busy lately. I almost thought you were missing," Khalees said in a strange tone. "I have been in Thailand recently and have been busy with affairs, as I believe you know. How did you complete the list I gave you when you returned to China?" "It's not a difficult task, it's been so long and there's no news at all," Khalees asked. "You are talking about those things, to win over Huang Yowei." "I did win over Huang Yowei. When I called him, he answered very directly, 'Just say hello,'" Lu Feng said helplessly. "I will never answer my calls again." Khalees on the other end of the phone was almost going crazy. She gritted her teeth and said, "Don't tell me. Just tell him directly that we are trying to win over him." "Yes, I just told him that he didn't cherish such a good opportunity and even scolded me." "You can't be friends with this kind of person," Lu Feng said deliberately. "Are you following this trick with me?" "No, I really don't. I want to do something, but I don't have the ability. If you give me some more time, I will definitely do it," Lu Feng promised. "You wait, you are teasing me, just wait for me." After speaking harshly, Khalees hung up the phone. Lu Feng shrugged, looking indifferent. He had not yet realized the seriousness of the matter. To be precise, Lu Feng underestimated the energy that Khalees could use. In the afternoon, people from Regal Security Company appeared in front of Guangming Electronics stores. There were 7 or 8 people in front of each store, almost half of the manpower. It was past 2 o'clock, the weather was scorching, the heat was unbearable, and there were not many people in front of the store. Several motorcycles came quickly and parked in front of the store, holding sticks and preparing to rush into the store and smash it without saying a word. Your mother. If you dare to come here and smash me, I'll blind you." 7 or 8 people rushed out and pounced on them like wolves and tigers. One of them even took out a gun from his arms. Several people who were about to smash them fled quickly, not even taking the things in their hands. 2 of them were pinned down, beaten on the ground. The people from the security company took control of the person and reported it to Lu Feng via phone. After Lu Feng learned the news, he called Zilun directly, which was like an assembly line operation. "Thank you for your hard work. These people deserve their punishment. I hope they won't be let go," Lu Feng said relaxedly to the phone status. "This can be regarded as my small contribution to local security. Mr. Lu is really a god. It would be great if you were Thai. I will dispatch the police now. Are you free in the afternoon? Let's have tea together." Kalun made the invitation. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 913. Latest website. Facing Zhilun's invitation, Lu Feng wanted to refuse. During this period, he had been trying very hard to avoid meeting Zhilun, but now he couldn't avoid it. "Okay, but with so many people arrested this afternoon, I guess you won't be able to handle it," Lu Feng declined. "It's okay, just let a few deputy directors handle it." "Oh, that's it?" "I suddenly remembered that there was a meeting in the afternoon," Lu Feng declined. "It's just a meeting. We haven't seen each other for a few days. I really miss you. Please cancel the meeting." Lu Feng couldn't refuse, so he had no choice but to agree. On the same day, Khalees contacted the vice presidents of several major companies such as Goldman Sachs Group, Morgan Group, and Merrill Lynch. Each of these high-ranking CEOs at the dinner table seemed extremely cautious. There is nothing scary about Khalees, but her unit is definitely not something that any company here would dare to provoke. "Excuse me, how can we help you?" asked the president of Goldman Sachs Administrative Department. "If you need anything, as long as we can help, we will do it without any hesitation," the vice president of Merrill Lynch Group said sincerely. Others have also stated that as long as it does not affect the core of the company, they are absolutely bound to do so. Khalees put a piece of steak into her mouth and chewed it gracefully, took another sip of red wine, wiped her lips, and then said, "You should know about GFN Electronics in China, right? Their boss, Lu Feng, do you all know him?" Several people present looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know how Lu Feng had provoked people like Khalees, and they didn't dare to ask. After all, any more words from Khalees' mouth might leak the secret. "No," several people said in unison. "I have called you here for one thing today. He is currently in Thailand. Can you let him feel some pressure?" Khalees glanced at him and asked. The vice president of Merrill Lynch was a little confused and asked, "Aren't you responsible for the assassination?" Everyone nodded slightly. They were running a company, and they had to rely on people like Khalees to carry out assassinations. "It's not an assassination. Lu Feng's current identity is very sensitive. If something happens to him, it will cause other troubles. I don't want the matter to get bigger. We can control it within the scope that we can deal with. I just want him to feel some pressure in Thailand." "Just, through your abilities," Khalees asked, "do you understand? That's commercial means. It's easy to say. Whether it's Motorola, Toshiba, Panasonic, or Sony, they all have a large market share in Thailand. It's no problem to squeeze out GFN Electronics," the CEO of Goldman Sachs replied. "This matter is a difficult matter for Khalees, but for them, it is not a big deal. It is just a matter of calling several holding companies to give instructions. Even if a few of them don't have a large holding, how many of them would dare not to obey their orders?" After the dinner, everyone discussed and decided to let Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch come forward. With two companies, Motorola and Toshiba, in a small market like Thailand, squeezing a Lu Feng would be as simple as squeezing an ant to death. After the agreement, everyone dispersed and returned to the company. The CEO of Goldman Sachs directly contacted the CEO of Motorola and requested that the market be squeezed as soon as possible for Lu Feng's latest Guangming Electronics in the Thai market to put pressure on him. At the same time, Toshiba executives also received a call from Merrill Lynch, hoping that they would make efforts in the Thai market. In global business, a company that has been established for less than a month can be surrounded and suppressed by two of the world's top electronics companies. It is absolutely unique, and it is unprecedented and unprecedented. Two behemoths are squeezing such a small company. No matter how high-spirited it is, it seems so feeble at this moment. Thailand, afternoon. Parker didn't find many people this time. There were less than 30 people in total. He only went to smash up 3 or 4 stores, and all 20 or so people were detained. Before the person finished recording the confession, a call came over. This time someone from the bureau replied that Zailun was not here, so wait for him to come back. Lu Feng originally wanted to drag Kevin over, but he still had a lot of things to do, and he had to arrange a TV interview with Tongpala in the afternoon. In the tea house, a tea show was going on, and he was dazzled by playing with a teapot. Lu Feng looked at Zailun, who was sitting opposite, smiled slightly awkwardly and said, "Good tea." Zailun could feel that Lu Feng was a little nervous when facing him. He picked up the cup and took a sip of tea and said, "I think you are very good." If I reject you, will you make things difficult for me?" Lu Feng still asked, although this sentence was a bit too realistic. That's not the case. In my eyes, you are just like you admiring a beautiful woman. I am a gentleman. You should feel it. Otherwise, with my power, the overlord would have taken advantage of me, wouldn't he? Zilun looked at Lu Feng and smiled. Then thank you. Lu Feng hurriedly took a sip of tea, organized his speech for a while and said, I don't discriminate against anyone, but I also hope that I can be respected, and I have a wife. Aren't you already divorced? Zilun stared at Lu Feng with interest and said, you don't think I didn't check your information, do you? What I want to express is that I don't mean that, and I hope you understand. Of course, I'm especially grateful that you have a good impression of me. I feel honored. I feel like a beautiful woman. Lu Feng couldn't help laughing. There is nothing better than a fair, handsome, young, and capable man like you. Who wouldn't be obsessed with it? If there was a beautiful, good-looking, young, and super capable woman in this world, I believe you would also fall for it. Baby, you are simply a beauty in the world, you know that. Zilun stared at Lu Feng so affectionately and said, I'm obsessed with you. Lu Feng felt embarrassed when he heard the previous compliments, but the words that followed gave him goosebumps and he froze. I'm not that good. Thank you for the compliment. Lu Feng didn't want to hear it anymore. After drinking tea for an hour, Zilun opened his heart completely and kept praising Lu Feng. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the heat wave at the end of August had faded. Zilun stood up and looked outside and said, why don't we go out? Let's take a walk. Outside there is lush vegetation and shady trees. In front of them is a young couple walking side by side. The boy looks a little shy. When walking, he swings his arms deliberately close to the girl. As they walk, they hold hands together. Seeing this, Lu Feng hurriedly raised his hands and said, I don't know much about you guys. Have you been like this since you were a child? Of course, I don't mean to offend. I didn't feel it before, but when I went to college, during those 4 years, I felt that several of my roommates were getting more and more beautiful and attractive, and one day I couldn't help it. Stop, 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 that's enough. Lu Feng stopped hastily. What I want to say is that I confessed my love to him. What do you think? Ah ha 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 ha, that's it? I thought you confessed your love to him. Lu Feng felt completely embarrassed. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Just when Lu Feng was thinking about how to get out of the situation and leave, a police officer from a distance rushed over and talked to Zilun Jilagulu breathlessly. Zilun turned back to Lu Feng and said, your company is in an emergency. Please call me and ask you to go back. Really? Lu Feng's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly said a few polite words, turned around and left, secretly guessing what might happen. Lu Feng was wearing a white shirt and holding a suit jacket in his hand. His back looked a little anxious. As the sun set, Zilun watched him go away with a smile on his face, a bit of fascination in his eyes. Just do it, don't worry, I will always protect you. I will be satisfied if I can do my best for you, Zilun muttered to himself. The little policeman next to him was almost so happy when he saw the chief, and thought to himself that it had been a long time since he had seen the chief smile. Lu Feng hurried back. On the way back, he wondered if his car had overturned during Tongpala's interview. As everyone knows, this afternoon's interview with Tongpala was actually one of his best performances. The listener cried in front of the camera. He was so aggrieved that even the host couldn't help crying. Various counterattacks have begun, publicity and public opinion in the business community have begun, and the competition in the arena is over before it even begins. Pike called to ask for the man, but it was already past 4 in the afternoon and he still hadn't been released. In a luxurious office, Pike's face looked extremely ugly. In less than 10 days, his face was completely lost. He had been around for so many years and fell into the hands of a foreigner. He was extremely dissatisfied. What the hum? Pike's eyes exuded ferocity. He was not a scumbag. What international influence he had, or whether Lu Feng was a representative of Chinese private enterprises, were no big deal in his eyes. If you really want to touch him, do you care so much? However, Pike knew that De Guy had been quiet recently. If he got into a fight with Fu Hao and Lu Feng, he would be afraid that De Guy would reap the benefits. Thinking of this, Parker picked up the phone on the table and called De Guy directly. "Who is it?" De Guy asked casually. He had been very comfortable these days. "De Guy, it's me, Pike. I'm going to touch the rich man." "What do you mean?" Pike asked. De Guy was stunned when he heard the news. He wanted to deal with Lu Feng? "I don't mean anything, it's up to you, but you have to give me a break, and the rest is up to you." De Guy doesn't want to care about anything now, he just wants to sit back and wait to receive the money. "For the sake of fairness to everyone, we will settle on your territory. I don't worry about the savings. You can go wherever you like." De Guy was a little impatient and hung up the phone immediately after speaking. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 914. Latest website. Pike put down the phone. As long as De Guy didn't cause trouble, he still didn't believe it. He couldn't touch a foreigner. Now the world is in chaos, and his credibility has obviously declined. However, as long as he becomes famous in one battle, he can regain his former status overnight. Just a matter. Although Parker has not been around for a long time, there is no shortage of legends about him in the world. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening when Lu Feng returned to the hotel. Kevin and others were waiting in the hotel lobby. When they saw Lu Feng coming back, they hurriedly stood up and said, "Mr. Lu, something happened." "What's going on?" Lu Feng really couldn't think of any major situation that could occur if the overall situation was stable. "Motorola headquarters and Toshiba headquarters have contacted us. The two parties asked us to withdraw from the Thai market, otherwise they will be rude." Kevin frowned. "You're welcome." "So what?" "They seem to have been polite." Lu Feng sneered, thinking it was something. "Mr. Lu, it's different this time. It's the senior executives of the two companies who contacted us, not the department presidents. It stands to reason that these senior executives are only responsible for the strategic layout of the company. We are not enough to influence their global strategy, right?" Kevin also thought it was too strange. GFN Electronics has been very popular internationally recently, but it is still too small for those big companies. GFN is like a child in front of them. Go upstairs first. Lu Feng also couldn't figure out why the top executives of these two companies suddenly started to get into trouble with him, just because of a small Thai market. Impossible, and it's not the US market, so it's not enough to attract their attention. The news of these two companies instantly attracted the attention of major international companies. There was an uproar for a while. Two international giants bullied a small company. In the coffee shop next to Wall Street, many corporate executives were chatting about this matter. There had been rumors before that Lu Feng was teasing Lambert. I don't know whether it was true or not. Anyway, Lu Feng was wrapped in a mysterious cloak, as if he could do anything. However, at this moment, this genius road is probably coming to an end. A person who was admired by Lambert ended up where he is today because of greed. So, no matter how talented a person is, he must learn to bow his head. A man in his 40s said to the person in front of the table. This is the wisdom of the workplace. Indeed, people only see the geniuses who have grown up, but not the geniuses who have been buried. Our investment bank has also investigated the background of this company. I have to say that Mr. Lu is really a powerful figure. He has made a fortune in China. This time, internationalization may be difficult. Isn't that right? In the end, I was knocked down and bought at a low price. This group of Wall Street elites chatted and seemed to have seen Lu Feng's fate. They never thought that Lu Feng had any hope, because over the years, Those who did not want acquisitions ended up with this ending. Europe, Schroeder's investment group, Leland can no longer hold on any longer. The company's situation is getting worse and worse, and she doesn't know how to tell investors. In the office, John, the president of the investment group, looked at the senior executives in front of him and raised his eyebrows. Do you know everything about GFN Electronics? I heard that the Thailand branch of GFN Electronics has been dissolved, hasn't it? A senior executive wondered. You don't know yet? Lu Feng dissolved the company and immediately established a new one. It's been very popular in Thailand these days. Can you still play like this? I really don't know. This time it depends on whether he can bear it or not. John leaned on the boss's chair. If Lu Feng could withstand the attacks of these two groups, even if all the previous conditions were false, he would definitely want to vote. But he is not optimistic about it. Not only him, but also the old guys in the office who have been in the investment world for 20 to 30 years are not optimistic about it. Their eyes are poisonous. The fate is in your hands. May God protect you. I can't help you. John looked at the scenery outside the window and said nothing more. Anyway, it is unlikely that he will give money to GFN Electronics this year. The top financial leaders around the world are watching a show, just like watching two big cats catching a mouse. The outcome is already determined, but the process is intriguing. Watanabe went to a meeting. He was fully responsible for this matter and was allowed to use no more than $30 million to squeeze the Thai market. Watanabe walked out of the conference room, feeling indescribably excited. He could finally let go and work hard. Goldman Sachs had strengthened its ties with Motorola. This was a very important message for Watanabe. As long as you perform well this time, it is not impossible to be transferred to the administrative department as the person in charge, specifically to connect with Goldman Sachs. Watanabe returned to the office, looked at the sunshine outside the window, and felt indescribably good. He said in a deep voice, "Since you are sincerely seeking death, don't blame me. $30 million, don't talk about a small in the Thai market. Even if we go to China to attack GFN Electronics, it is not difficult." Khalees was busy with her own business. She didn't know how big a shock her words could cause in the financial industry. She just wanted to make Lu Feng suffer in business. After finishing his own business, he called Lu Feng. In the living room of Lu Feng's suite, Kevin and others were chatting about the current situation. The phone rang. Lu Feng answered the phone and said, "Who is this? I believe you have felt something now. If you don't obey, there are enough means waiting for you," Khalees said like a winner. Lu Feng always felt familiar with this feeling. After thinking about it for a while, he realized that Su Yorong also had this feeling. Women who gained power always liked to use this absolute power to suppress men. "I was still thinking, Motorola and Toshiba are crazy, it turns out you were the one behind them," Lu Feng sneered and said, "Okay, since you want to play tricks with me, then I will play with you. Lu Feng, I have high hopes for you. When I was on Wall Street, I helped you so much. If you repay me even a little bit, I wouldn't be where I am today." Khalees said, very unhappy, "This is you brought it upon yourself, and it's not too late to be obedient now." "I'm not a dog, why should I be obedient? It's so funny. You want to scare me by letting out 2 wolf dogs. I never look at the owner when beating dogs, so I just deal with them," Lu Feng said. The phone was hung up. The atmosphere in the living room was a little stiff. Now everything was clear. The matter of breaking the monopoly of these foreign companies and establishing a foothold in the local area was almost completed, but now this happened again. Kevin rubbed his face with his hands worriedly and said, "Mr. Lu, we are just a businessman, and we are not an international group. There are some things that we should not mess with." "What's the big deal?" Lu Feng said nonchalantly as he lit a cigarette. "Mr. Lu, we really can't withdraw first. We are planning to go overseas next year to avoid the limelight," Kevin suggested. Based on his experience as an international professional manager, retreating is the wisest way to protect yourself in this situation, not to mention that the investment of Schroeder's group is also uncertain. Lu Feng glanced at him and said nothing. Do you really think that if you withdraw from the overseas market, you will be stable after returning to China? Domestic companies such as Changhong did not risk their lives with Jiafeng because Jiafeng has a certain overseas market. The overseas market will bring a lot of profits, so when it comes to fighting domestically, Jiafeng Electronics Health Bar will be thicker than theirs. Giving up the overseas market is equivalent to abandoning martial arts. Not to mention being laughed at when you return, the counterattack in the domestic market will definitely be more violent. Don't retreat. Fight with them, Lu Feng stood up and said in a deep voice. Can't you make it? Kevin asked with a frown on his face. Hum it hard. Kevin stopped talking. He was in his 50s and would be retiring in a few more years. What a sin he had done to meet Lu Feng. When Volkswagen was working, there was so much pressure. All he had to do was tell his domestic partners to do it, and he would be responsible for brand promotion. Shatai had already received a call from Shi Watanabe. During the entire hour-long conference call, Shatai seemed very excited. The budget of $30 million was enough to take the Thai market by storm. After sweeping away the decline, Shatai said with a smile on the phone, "Don't worry, I will definitely live up to your expectations. You are not here to do this in person. If you have any plans, please contact me as soon as possible. Tomorrow is September. I hope that 1 month later, you can come to the headquarters to drink the celebration wine I organized for you, Watanabe Shishin Vocal Channel. Don't worry, as long as you have money, I will be invincible here," Shatai said excitedly. Okay, extend the promotional activities, continue to squeeze the market, and at the same time buy a large amount of media, tell everyone the true face of the company supported by Lu Feng, and spend money to find media people, celebrities, and all influential people, and let them speak out against this company, you know, Watanabe ordered. Okay, don't worry. At the same time, the president of Toshiba's overseas business unit also contacted Vera and asked him to get Lu Feng out of the Thai market within a month. Night has fallen, several branches are talking to each other on the phone, and all the media in Thailand have received invitations from these two companies. Since the headquarters was so supportive, Shatai didn't mind giving Lu Feng a big deal. After ordering the media, he picked up the phone and called Muzai. What's the matter? When Muzha learned that the call was from Shatai, his voice sounded a little unhappy. He had been working for so long and hadn't seen a penny. Brother, don't be impatient. I'll give you a big job. This time, I'll give you another 10 million baht. As soon as it's done, the money will be credited to your account immediately, Shatai leaned on the chair and said with a gesture. Extremely arrogant. What big job? Muzha became interested. It's Lu Feng again, I want one of his legs. Once this is done, the money will arrive immediately. Muzha heard that it was still Lu Feng. Originally, he offered 20 million baht for Lu Feng's life, but now it has become a leg. Of course he is happy. My patience is limited. After this thing is done, if the money is not available, I will do it to you, Muzha said viciously. Ha 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 ha, don't worry. Putting down the phone, Shatai lit a cigar and took a puff. Starting from tomorrow, Lu Feng's hell will come. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 915. Latest website. A budget of $30 million, if placed in a country as big as China, would naturally not be able to cover the entire population, but if placed in a place as small as Thailand, it would be enough to have a bombing effect. In the evening, Several important TV stations in Thailand broadcast Thongpala's interview. A man who devoted himself to the people and wanted to build a national brand could no longer bear the grievance and cried on the TV. Countless people in front of the TV were infected by this emotion and sighed for a moment that it was really not easy. During the interview, Thongpala also told reporters that since he was born in R/U0026D and his company has just started, he really understands technology. But I don't know anything about marketing. He is such a simple and honest person. He is not interested in money or fame. He just wants to do something. Why is it so difficult? After the heads of Shatai, Vera, and other branches read the interviews, the first thing that came to their minds was, does he still understand marketing? Lu Feng has almost reached the extreme level of identity marketing and emotional marketing. He still doesn't understand? It doesn't matter anymore. Even if he has thousands of plans, he can only face destruction starting tomorrow. Shatai turned off the TV casually. Night had come. What were you doing at home? Go out and have some fun. After Lu Feng had dinner, he held a conference call with senior executives Wei Yandan and Zhu Lidong. At present, everything in the domestic market is stable. This year's planned plan should be completed. The rest depends on the overseas market. At the same time, Lu Feng also learned about the thoughts of Toshiba and Motorola this time. They would not relax until Jia Feng was driven back to China. Lu Feng was sitting on the sofa smoking a cigarette, with the phone on speakerphone. The atmosphere was a bit solemn. The other end of the phone also felt the pressure. He was trembling with fear in the face of a giant, not to mention the two tigers coming, and ordinary companies would have been there for a long time. He retreated in fear. Mr. Lu, if the other party wants to fight with us, we have no chance of winning. If it doesn't work out, just retreat and make plans next year, Wei Yandan suggested. Both parties on the phone were silent. Lu Feng must be under pressure at this moment. So many senior executives meant the same thing, and he also knew that the shareholders also meant the same thing. I don't believe that they will risk their lives with us, but someone in the United States has told us that these two are not tigers, but two dogs. These two dogs are still dogs with ulterior motives. We are different. We have no way out. Their money more, but less anger, because in this business war in Thailand, they have not figured out why they are standing. We are different, we have less money, but we have more anger. Lu Feng said solemnly, didn't they transfer $30 million? Well, within 3 days, 30 million yuan will be transferred to the account of Guangming Electronics Company. Since the international business community does not recognize us and feels that we are untenable, then let's have a fight, let's have a solid fight here. Wei Yandan and the others on the other end of the phone had already heard that it was difficult to change Lu Feng's decision, so they had no choice but to agree. Let's hurry up and remit the money. That's it. At the same time, we are keeping an eye on the progress of the Tianjin factory building. The electrical appliance city will also come up with a plan by the end of the year. Lu Feng finished the order and hung up the phone. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening. Lu Feng put out the cigarette butt in the ashtray and said to Kevin and the others, get some rest first. Remember to get in touch with some media tomorrow and increase marketing at the same time. Thongpala, no one is allowed to question his identity, and anyone's slander is the resistance of capital. Seize this and you will be invincible. After Lu Feng finished giving instructions, Kevin nodded and yawned. He was old and couldn't bear it anymore. The next day, at 8 o'clock in the morning, as various morning newspapers began to be placed on the newsstand, the morning news broadcast began. The news about Thongpala was overwhelming. There were only a few local TV stations, so another station was broadcasting related news. Another one is still the same. Regardless of local stations, national stations, or paid commercial TV, everyone is talking about Thongpala, and everyone is talking about Lu Feng. The news bombardment has not ended yet. Toshiba and Motorola have announced extended discounts, especially for TVs. As long as you buy a pager or mobile phone, you can buy a TV set on the same day and get a 30% discount. At 8:30, the deputy general managers of the two companies publicly reported with their real names that Guangming Electronics Co., Limited made false propaganda and manufactured and sold fake and inferior products. One after another, everyone in the Thai business community is confused. This is simply full coverage of firepower, plowing the ground with cannonballs, and trying to take them away in one wave. After Songpa woke up, he was shocked when he saw the news that hit him early in the morning. Sitting at the dining table, Songpa said with a solemn expression, "Lu Feng is afraid that he is going to die. Will it be possible if we continue to cooperate with him? What's the disadvantage to me?" Shasha, wearing a sexy dress with ribbons, leaned against Songpa and whispered, "Why did he offend these two companies? Target him like this. This guy is jumping up and down. Something happened. If that doesn't work, I will find a way to contact Sarami and leave him alone," Songpa said solemnly. "Ignore him, let's eat first." After Lu Feng woke up, he was also stunned by the overwhelming news. Kevin was already a little confused and said, "Mr. Lu, the media are now bought out by them. Many media do not accept us buying articles, and the local some departments have begun to take action. We are legal and compliant, let them investigate." Lu Feng stood up and said, "How is the outside reaction?" "There are already long queues at Toshiba and Motorola stores. Today is the opening day of our third batch of stores. The impact is expected to be huge." Kevin worried, "If we can't control the media, we will lose the publicity window. This is a headache." "Simple, do offline publicity." Lu Feng made a decision immediately, "Contact the local municipal government today, we will rent all the telephone poles, trees, and billboards in the city, and print Tongpala's photos on them. Just one sentence, capital eats people, so helping me is helping the future of Thailand. This will take some time. Don't be afraid. We will notify all stores today to put a TV at the door of the store. Record Tongpala's interview yesterday on a CD and play it repeatedly. We will make uniform short sleeves for the store clerks, with Guangming Electronics written on the front and back. Thailand's light of tomorrow, it is written on the front that international capital never sleeps." Lu Feng issued a series of orders. Right? His current state is an order from Kevin's point of view, and no doubt is allowed. Find me a tricycle, make a banner, stick it on the body, install a speaker on the car, and publicize how they are embarrassing Guangming Electronics. I want to read the copy, and I will write it around international companies suppressing patriotic companies, and follow. Am I playing a public opinion war? I will kill you." Lu Feng turned back and stared at Kevin and said solemnly, "Since we want to deal with him, we must deal with him to death." After hearing the series of instructions, Kevin's mind was already a little overwhelmed. If he lost the mass media, Kevin would really not have thought of so many publicity methods. This person's brain is definitely not that of an ordinary person. Kevin hurriedly went to do these things, whether it was billboards, promotional CDs, or hiring a car, it all took time. After Kevin left, Lu Feng went to Sarami's room. The local municipal government's investigation and handling had to be ensured through some connections. Otherwise, it would be fine, and people would be able to find something for you. Lu Feng knew this very well. "Who is it?" Sarami opened the door and saw Lu Feng standing at the door with his translator. He clasped his hands and said, "Sawadika. Savadika, can we go in and have a chat? If it's inconvenient, we can just change the place," Lu Feng said to her. "Come in." Entering the room, Lu Feng said bluntly, "I'm encountering some difficulties now, and I need you to make a call for me. As long as I can help you, I won't hesitate, but I'm afraid I won't be able to help you," Sarami said worriedly. "It's okay, you can do it, just call Maha." Lu Feng turned back to the translator beside him and said, call Maha and tell Sarami that he misses him. This phone number was Maha's personal number. If Lu Feng had something to do with him, the other party would never answer the phone. After the call was connected, Maha on the other end looked a little excited. "Baby, do you miss me? Where do you miss me?" Lu Feng lowered his voice and taught her, "Guess." "You guess." "Ha ha ha ha. I knew it. Don't worry. I'll take care of the things around me in a week at most and then go find you." "How is the businessman taking care of you?" Maha asked. "He's very busy. I'm staying in a hotel now and everything is fine. I just miss you." Sarami's voice was a little gentle. The person on the other end of the phone was already feeling itchy and started to say some embarrassing things. Sarami was a little girl after all, and her blush reached her ears. Fortunately, Lu Feng was there, going back and forth with Maha. The translator sitting aside was a little impressed. Mr. Lu really knew everything. "Tell me something," Lu Feng reminded him with his mouth. "By the way, he seems to be very angry in the past 2 days. He said that he can't stay here any longer. If he leaves, he wants to take me with him," Sarami said sadly. "Take you away? Why should I take you away?" Maha was provoked, and now he said to take you away. What a joke. His company is being besieged by many companies here. Some people want to frame him and report to some local departments to shut down his company. Those people are powerful and he can't afford to offend him. Sarami sighed. Business is not easy either. That's it. Don't worry. Just tell him, don't say there's nothing wrong with his company. If there is something wrong with it, who dares to investigate? If he dares to take you away, I won't be done with him. How dare a small businessman dare to take you away? What a turn of events. Maha's voice was filled with displeasure. You are so kind to me. I will tell him in a moment and let him stay safe. As long as you are here, nothing will happen. Sarami smiled happily. After feeling tired for a while, he just hung up the phone. Lu Feng looked at Sarami and said with a smile, did you see that? Some things won't be so difficult if you say this. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 916. Latest website. Such intensive media bombardment of a small company in the Thai market not only shocked the local business community, but even the international community began to pay attention. For a while, everyone speculated on the origin of this company, causing Motorola and Toshiba to take action. In the branch office, Shatai was on the phone with a constant smile on his face. He said to Vera on the other end of the phone, what other tricks does he have? He is just an ant with no power to restrain a chicken, and he is really you dare to think that you can compete with me, it's simply ridiculous. Ha 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 ha, $30 million in return. I think the headquarters thinks too highly of him. Vera smiled wildly. You can't say that about the money. The price quoted by the media is not low. If we work for a few more days, we will gain some benefits, Shatai said with a smile. Yes, yes, you are still smart. As long as we don't let him speak, don't say he is a lie. Even if it is true, it can become a lie, Shatai said happily. Don't worry, this is just the beginning, tonight is the highlight. Is there any good show tonight? Then I have to take a closer look. All morning, there were constant calls to Shatai, full of compliments. Several foreign companies vented their anger at the same time, and everyone in the related industry chain had to fawn over them. For a time, Shatai looked like the godfather of electronics in Thailand. After putting down the phone, Shatai picked up a cup of coffee, stood in front of the window and looked outside. He took a sip of coffee and muttered, in the face of absolute strength, everything is too fragile. If you go back without a leg, you can still give it to the Chinese gang. Look, businessmen, if you come here from now on, you will have to kneel down for me. Things are fermenting violently, and the Thai people are already confused. They were still moved by Tongpala last night, but things turned upside down as soon as they woke up. These ordinary people are like monkeys in front of capital. They cry sometimes and get angry, not knowing who is real and who is fake. However, scalpers didn't care about this. They sensed business opportunities and formed long queues in front of Motorola and Toshiba stores early. Sales began to skyrocket, and in less than an hour, some stores were sold out. Information from the Thai business community was immediately sent to Shi Watanabe. He looked at the latest sales data. When all potential consumers were occupied by scalpers and attracted by low prices, the total number of consumers remained unchanged, and the sales of the two companies increased. Under such high pressure, other companies have no room to survive. Death, if you don't die this time, God will not tolerate it. Watanabe smiled extremely happily, picked up the phone and reported the situation to Wall Street. Electronic products have a long service life, and the total number of potential users is not large. It is equivalent to a 50 square meter room. Motorola and Toshiba occupy 49 square meters first, and everyone else will die. Now the two families have the energy to occupy most of the space, and Lufeng has no other way out except death. In business competition, everyone's price reductions are for the sake of better price increases in the future. When every company faces competitors, it cuts itself. The most painful thing is not it, but its competitors. In less than half a day, the situation in Thailand has spread all over the world. This result is expected, but some people still hope for a turn for the better. On Wall Street, Lambert was sitting in his office, looking at the information in his hand, shaking his head slightly and saying, "If this matter passes so easily, it means that I have misjudged the person." Lambert was also a little nervous. His eyes told him that Lufeng was a man who could step forward, but in his heart he hoped that he would be suppressed and he would take the opportunity to buy it at a low price. When Schroeder Investment Group saw the news, John and others didn't say anything, so they just waited and waited. The most anxious shareholders are Jenkin and United Capital. They want to ask what's going on, but they are afraid that things will turn around tomorrow. Their opponents are so powerful that they don't have much confidence in Lufeng. "Should we convene a shareholders meeting?" the assistant next to him asked. "Stop convening, it's crazy," Jenkins said a little dull. Throughout the morning, news about Guangming Electronics Company was flying all over the place, and there were a lot of curses, but no one stood up and said a word. For a while, the public opinion was one-sided. The phone number of Guangming Electronics was almost exploded. Countless people called and cursed them as liars, and some even directly cursed them. The words were so unpalatable that the company's senior management had no choice but to unplug the phone line. Seeing that the company was about to be drowned by saliva, Lufeng did not panic and accompanied Sarami to have lunch, while Kevin was busy on the front line. Due to the large orders for various brands, ordinarily the workshop couldn't make it at all, so they simply contacted a factory and paid a high price to produce it immediately. The fire here was already adding fuel to the fire. Pike was ready to deliver the final blow. He called the person in charge of the Regal Security Company directly. After the call was connected, he directly said, "Tell Regal that tonight, he will be at the Munich bar. If you don't dare to come, get out of Thailand. If I give up tonight, I'll be his pawn, do you understand? Don't worry." After hanging up the phone, several people in charge discussed it and Pike took the initiative. This was simply asking for death. If he became famous in one battle tonight, he would really occupy half of Thailand. After several people discussed it, they called Lufeng. "Mr. Lu, I have your phone number." A waiter handed Lufeng a wireless phone with both hands. "I'll take a call," Lufeng said to Sarami, took the phone and said, "Who is this?" "Brother Hao," Parker called. "Okay, I understand. I'll keep the appointment tonight." Lufeng agreed, hung up the phone, and handed it to the waiter. At this time, Pike asked him to show off, and he didn't know about these things in the business world, so he chose it very cleverly. If there was no connection between them, Lu Feng himself wouldn't believe it. Coupled with the shooting that occurred in front of the hotel when they first arrived, these people hiding in the dark also began to take action. Lu Feng didn't think that Parker was responsible for the shooting. He didn't have the courage, so there was someone else. If Shatai could find him once, he could find him a second time. Taking a deep breath, Lu Feng frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" Sarami asked, concerned. "There are a lot of things going on." "No matter what, how about going out to relax tonight? It's not a problem for you to hold it in at the hotel." Lu Feng looked at her with a smile. "Is it appropriate for me to go to the bar now?" Sarami hesitated. "It doesn't matter, just call Maha and report." Lu Feng looked at her and had thought of everything. After dinner, Lu Feng called Maha's deputy and told him about the matter. Maha didn't care at all and agreed directly, waving his hand to signal the deputy to leave him alone. There were several guns placed in front of Muja, each loaded with bullets. A few tall men sat aside and wiped the short blades. They had already begun to prepare. "Call me and ask, has the man named Lu come out?" Muja asked casually. The tall man picked up the phone next to him and called. A jeep parked in front of the hotel. He didn't even take pictures. There was a man in his 20s sitting in the car. He lowered half of the window and smoked a cigarette. He looked at the phone. He said, "I didn't see it. I saw other people coming in and out. Let him keep an eye on him." At around 7 o'clock in the evening, as night fell, a dance show started in front of Nemui Bar. A group of girls in cool clothes twisted their bodies under the electronic music DJ, which was particularly attractive to tourists. Dagi came down to inspect as usual. The largest booth had been reserved for Parker. Dagi gave instructions to his younger brother. "Don't pay too much attention to Parker's troubles. Just ask him to compensate for the price of whatever things he breaks. Don't worry too much. Nosy." The younger brothers have already sensed that this night is not peaceful. At 7:30, Lu Feng walked out of the hotel in casual clothes with a relaxed pace, surrounded by bodyguards. The captain saw the jeep at a glance. "Mr. Lu, it's not a good time to go out today." "They're here again." The captain pointed to the jeep not far away and said, "3 times, and I don't even bother to change the car." Lu Feng snorted and shouted towards the car, "Hey! Brother, we are going out, don't sleep." If they didn't change cars 3 times as a sign of contempt for Lu Feng, then Lu Feng's words were the biggest provocation to them. The young man stared at Lu Feng with a displeased face, and stretched out his hand out of the car window to show his middle finger. "Fake squid," Lu Feng returned the greeting to him with a smile on his face, and then got into the car. The motorcade sped towards the bar. Pike had already arrived at the bar. He didn't bring many people with him. Most of the people were outside. Pike looked at the brothers around him and said, "We can't take the initiative to stir up trouble tonight. Jalun people have a good relationship with rich people, you can see it when they smashed up a store last time." "Then what should we do?" the younger brother asked. "Let him stir up trouble. If he dares to touch a finger of ours, he will do it. If he doesn't provoke, don't touch him. I don't believe he can bear it if he touches the woman next to him," Pike said solemnly. "Good." Several people around him were obviously familiar with this routine. "I won't show up now. You guys will be here in a while. I will come out if something happens." Pike's design was very good. He first designed proof of his alibi, and then designed the rich man to take the initiative. If Zalun came to fight, he couldn't do anything to him. The responsibility was entirely on the rich man's side. At the door of the bar, a kind of boy was already waiting. Dozens of people stood in 3 rows, which looked particularly dazzling in this fireworks alley. In particular, Pike's younger brothers were all standing around scatteredly, while Lu Feng's man was dressed in a suit, with an upright body and a hairstyle that looked very combat effective. The doorman opened the car door, and Lu Feng stepped out of the car with a mask on his face. Dozens of people bowed in unison. "Good evening, brother Hao." Lu Feng raised his hand and pressed it lightly, then stepped inside. Tourists and other people on the street were stunned when they saw such a scene. What kind of big shot is this? A jeep parked behind, and the young man in the car took out his mobile phone and made a call. "Pattaya, Manai Bar, there are many people around him, he wears a mask, everyone calls him rich man." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 917. Latest website. Brother Rich. Mu Jia was stunned for a moment when he heard these three words. He finally understood that he asked Pike to find a few people to destroy the place that day, but he was killed by them. Everything is clear now. Haha, I really didn't expect that he, a foreigner, actually came out to hang out. It's quite interesting. Mu Jia put the gun away from his waist and said to the tall man, "Let's go and work, we just happened to clean up together today." Pike called him a few days ago, hoping that he could help eliminate the rich man. Unexpectedly, he was alone. Lu Feng's methods also surprised him a little. In booth number 1, Lu Feng and his group had already taken their seats. There were various fruit plates, snacks, and foreign wines on the table, which looked very luxurious. Many girls who were looking for targets looked over here, wanting to fight. He wanted to say hello, but he saw that the person standing next to Lu Feng was not easy to mess with, and he didn't dare to come over. Sitting across from him was a man in his 30s with a beard. He had opened a few buttons of his shirt and could see the tattoos inside. He was chewing gum and stared at Lu Feng with an unruly expression and said, "Brother Pai, just a moment, come here, you can call me Laban, I've heard of your name in the past few days, I would like to advise you, don't be too crazy, because people are crazy." The other person spoke Cantonese very fluently and looked like he was of mixed race. "It doesn't matter whether you are crazy or not. You have no right to tell me this. Let Parker come. He said that if he can't eat me tonight, he will be my little brother." Lu Feng lit a cigarette and looked at Lai Ben asked, "I'm just curious, how much does Parker give you a month?" "Don't tell me this. I'm here to get around. It doesn't matter whether you have money or not. What's important is brotherhood. Let me tell you, it's still too late to give in. Otherwise, I'll chop you to death in a moment." Laban pointed out 2 fingers. Lu Feng looked at him and said with a ferocious expression, "You are just a big fool, you know it?" "Ha ha ha ha," Lu Feng laughed instead of getting angry and smoked, "Converted into RMB, how many thousand yuan can you make a month? You can't even make 10,000 yuan a month, what are you doing? I was born for the loyalty of the world. Unlike you, I only have money in my mind. No matter what you say, in my eyes, you are nothing, a waste. No matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter. You throw money at me, ha ha. Bah. Ha 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 ha." Lai Ben wanted to irritate Lu Feng, stretched his neck forward and said, "You're unhappy, aren't you? I don't deserve to talk to you. I can sit here just to give you face. Hit me if you dare. Come on, hit me." Lai Ben's face was almost stretched out in front of Lu Feng, and what he was waiting for was a slap in the face. How could Lu Feng step into such a low-level trap? Although he didn't know what their backup plan was, there was no need to fall into the trap. If a combo attack came later, it would be uncomfortable. Lu Feng took a puff of cigarette, stared at him and smiled, took out a checkbook from his arms and said, "Your words are really rude, but it doesn't matter. As long as you are willing to change, I will give you a check of 100 million baht." After Lu Feng finished speaking, he smiled at him and took out a pen, ready to write down a string of numbers that ordinary people could never get in their lifetime. Laban admitted that he hesitated and swallowed for a few seconds, but a few seconds later he felt that Lu Feng was playing tricks on him. "I've said it before, I don't care about money, do you understand?" Laban shouted angrily. The young guys standing behind him stared at Lu Feng and glared at each other for a moment. The place had just become hot. People had no intention of dancing, let alone flirting with girls. They were all staring at booth number 1. "Brother Lai, I know, who is the one wearing the mask?" a young gangster asked. "Holy crap, no, the rich man doesn't even know that he's been in the limelight recently. I really haven't heard of it." "I know it, Laban. He is very ruthless. He is a fierce general under Boss Pike. This kid will be finished today. I also think this kid is going to be useless." There were people who were hanging out in the world, and there were also tourists. Hearing these words, Lu Feng began to worry. After all, he spoke Mandarin with a clear accent, and it looked like he was not a local. The two sides were arguing, but Lu Feng still refused to fall into the trap. It was not suitable to delay it any longer, so he had to use that trick. Wright looked at Sarami next to Lu Feng, and his words were a bit frivolous. Pike was in the restaurant upstairs, sitting at the dining table behind the pillars. Seeing Wright whining, he couldn't help but said, "Just get started, what nonsense, it's true." Seeing how anxious he was, Dagi, who was sitting across from him, smiled while smoking a cigarette and said, "There has to be a process. He can't stand up, run up to others, and touch his butt." "Nothing can be done," Pike said angrily. "I know the woman next to the rich man. She was originally a dancer in my ballroom. He was ready to support me and got a contract with me. I agreed to 5 opportunities. I went once and never went again. I wanted to go with her. If you drag me down, you will treat me like a fool." Dagi leaned back, glanced at Lu Feng, snorted coldly and stopped talking. In his eyes, Lu Feng took Sarami once and failed. As long as he didn't use it 5 times, he would never have to pay the 100 million. "It just so happened that I beat the drowned dog today and settled the matter." The two sides were quarreling fiercely. Sarami wanted to go to the bathroom, so he gave Wright a chance. When he passed by, he smiled, raised his hand and slapped Wright firmly. Snapped. "Ah! Ha 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 ha!" Sarami screamed and looked very panicked. He covered his buttocks with his hands and backed away repeatedly. Wright and the others laughed very happily. A stone fell from Lu Feng's heart. He stood up suddenly with a gloomy expression. Without saying a word, he raised his hand and slapped Wright on the face. Snapped. This slap was extremely hard and slapped Wright directly on the sofa. In an instant, the other person rushed up. The people on Lu Feng's side were not vegetarians either. He directly hit him and put his hands in his arms. The two sides were about to take action in a flash of lightning, and the people around them didn't dare to take a breath. "You dare to hit me? I'm telling you, you've ruined today." Wright stood up, covered his face with his hands, and said gloomily, "This is not over today." Someone saw that a fight was about to start here, and seeing that there was a gun in the posture, they hurriedly called the internal security. If the internal security dared to take action, they could only send someone to find Dagi. In less than a minute, Dagi walked down with the support of more than a dozen people. Who did I see?" A skinny man looked shocked and asked the person next to him, "Is that Dagi?" "Dagi is covering this situation. Who else is there besides him?" "It's over. Dagi came down so quickly. This guy is useless and has been tricked. If you look at it, he is in trouble today, not to mention that Dagi and Pike are said to have a good relationship. If they start a fight here, all the people under this kid will have to answer here." A group of people chirped as they watched Dagi walk over. They could see Dagi tonight. For them, they could brag about going out for a long time. The crowd dispersed, and Dagi walked over. He could choose to know the rich man, or pretend that he didn't know the rich man. He looked at Lu Feng and said, "Brother, are you making trouble here? What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Lu Feng stared at him and asked. "Since you don't give me face like this, there's nothing I can do about it. If you want to fight, you can go out and fight. It doesn't matter how many people you love to death." Degi looked at Right, snorted and said, "What the hum? No future." Everyone originally thought that once Degi came forward, the rich man would be finished. After all, he was in someone else's place. Unexpectedly, Degi didn't dare to touch him. The gangsters around all know Brother Fu Hao, but they also know that Fu Hao has just risen, and there are countless people behind him like Degi. But now Degi didn't dare to touch him. While everyone was in shock, an angry shout came from the stairs, "Who dares to hit my people?" Everyone turned around and followed the sound. When someone saw Pike walking over with someone, they were shocked and speechless. Pike. Pike and Degi are definitely very famous in the eyes of ordinary people. With these two people gathered here tonight, it seems that the rich man is really going to die. When Wright saw Parker coming down, he hurriedly walked over and said, "Brother Parker, I just slapped his butt, and he slapped me. Shouldn't I hit you?" When Lu Feng saw this situation, he didn't know what it meant. He stared at Pike, who came over and said, "We meet again." "Yeah, we met again. I originally invited you to talk, but you actually beat up my brother, the rich man. Is this how you treat your subordinates? If you don't give me an explanation for this matter today, can you leave?" "Get out of this door," Pike yelled, and the people around him were tense, as if they were about to draw their guns in the next second. The booth number 1 was surrounded by people. The ordinary tourists had already run away, but more gangsters came in to watch the fun. Parker, Degi, and Rich Man are definitely the most awesome people in Pattaya. If they miss this night, they will lose a lot of bragging rights in the world. Lu Feng only had a few dozen people with him, but there were hundreds of people surrounding them. The atmosphere was extremely depressing. Lu Feng looked at a few people, smiled contemptuously, took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, ready to light it. "Yes, tell the captain to call Maha." Before he could light up his cigarette, Pike stepped forward, took the cigarette away, threw it on the ground, smashed it to pieces with his feet, and said with a sinister smile, "If you can walk out tonight, I won't mess around anymore." "Really? Congratulations in advance for washing your hands." Lu Feng took out another cigarette, but before he could put it in his mouth, Wright snatched it away and threw it on the ground without saying a word. "What are you doing? Who is afraid of you? Come on. Eat the gun." The boys on both sides had already clashed. They both had guns in their hands, but no one dared to put their hand on the trigger. With such a dense crowd and such a close distance, no one would survive if the gun went off. The entire Pattaya street outside became lively. All the gangsters knew that the three people had gathered at the Manaihi bar. The police patrolling the street also felt something was wrong and hurriedly reported it. "What?" Zailun stood up from his position in shock and shouted. Mr. Lu was blocked by Degi and Pike. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 918. Latest website. It was almost time to get off work, so Zailun ordered the police officer next to him, "Notify, everyone gathers to fight against illegal crimes." More than a dozen police cars roared away with their lights flashing. It could be said that Zailun mobilized all the people the branch could mobilize and came out in full force. The place was crowded and the bar could no longer operate normally. Lu Feng and the others were now at a disadvantage. He looked at De Gui and asked, "You want to get involved in this matter, right? After all, This is my place. Of course, I won't do anything. Don't worry. Digi looked at Lu Feng, leaned over and looked at the captain, and whispered, tell him, not even a penny of my money is worth it, don't think less. Why are you in a hurry? Don't worry, Lu Feng looked at him and said. Digi snorted coldly, turned around and walked away. Lu Feng took advantage of this opportunity and whispered to the captain beside him, call Maha when you have a chance and tell him that Sarami's butt was touched. The place was so crowded that it was really hard to get away. Everyone on Lu Feng's side had several pairs of eyes staring at them. If there was any slight movement, a fierce battle would be inevitable. Aren't you very arrogant? Are you very arrogant? Pike took a step forward, raised his hand and patted Lu Feng's face. He put his hand on his shoulder and said, don't you always talk in the same way? Why don't you talk today? Did you speak? The person who hit me, damn, blinded you, translate, I will kill you if you don't translate. Believe it or not, I will translate every humming curse word. The captain was pointed at gunpoint and had to translate. The extremely arrogant rich man a few days ago actually ended up as he did today. There were constant sneers from all around, as if he had slapped rich man in the face and they were all riding on this man's head. I'll give you a chance now. There are so many brothers watching today. Kneel down, kowtow to me, toast me, and say in front of everyone that you have surrendered. I guarantee that you brothers will leave unscathed. Get out. Pike took a cigar from the boy next to him, lit it, and took a puff and said, otherwise, I can't guarantee it. Kneel down. Do you hear me? Wright shouted towards Lu Feng. Kneel down. They saw that the captain didn't translate, and some people knew Chinese, so they started yelling in broken Chinese. The scene instantly became chaotic. What if I don't kneel down? Lu Feng stared at Pike and asked. Don't kneel? Do you think your foreign status can protect you? Pike raised his eyebrows, took a short blade from the side, and gestured, tell me, which part do you want to lose today? The other boys have already put their hands into their arms, and the situation is tense. If you are not careful, it will be a gun battle. Everyone is nervous to the extreme. In this psychological game, whoever cannot hold it back first will lose. More than a dozen police cars roared past and stopped at the door. Zalun got out of the car and saw people blocking the door of the bar. He happened to hear Pike's words inside and shouted loudly, who dares to let him lose a part? Let me see. The scene was so quiet that one could hear the sound of needles dropping. Such loud shouts were no less than thunder in everyone's ears, and some were even frightened. In an instant, everyone turned their heads and looked out the door. A group of police officers rushed in and began to control the scene and let some unimportant gangsters out. Everyone made away, and Zalun walked over with a grand gesture, staring at Pike and asking, what are you doing? What do so many people want to do? Rebellion. When Pike saw Kalun coming, he didn't panic. He smiled slightly and said, what time is it, Director Kalun, are you still working? It's not a big deal, it's just a conflict. Are there any conflicts? Zalun looked around and asked, there are 500 or 600 people at the scene, right? This has nothing to do with me. I don't even know them. I just went out to play with my friends today. As a result, this gentleman wearing a mask hit me. I'll ask him about it. Isn't that too much? Pike was very old. The fried dough sticks responded. Do you need to ask about it? What do you want us to do? Zalun looked at the group of people and said in a deep voice, do you know what illegal gatherings are? I didn't ask them to gather, so it's not my fault. Pike knew that Zalun might come, but he didn't expect that it would come so quickly. It seemed that tonight was going to be ruined. However, Pike was not so easy to fool, and said to Zalun, officer, I'm just here to have fun. This gentleman wearing a mask is the real illegal gathering, with dozens of people, uniformly dressed, threatening for the safety of society. We also hope that police officers can enforce the law impartially. Yes. I saw him killing someone a few days ago, Laban shouted from the side. Seeing them provoking him, Zilun put his arm around Lu Feng's shoulders and said to Pike, "He is my true love, Pike. You are just here to fool around. Don't you understand this? Or are you saying you don't understand me, pretending to understand?" Oh, Pike looked like he suddenly understood, and said teasingly, "It turns out that the person who sells butts is just what I said." "Who are you scolding?" The captain did not translate, but shouted angrily at Zalun. "How dare I scold him? It's too late for me to respect him." Pike couldn't touch the rich man, so he could only use this method to lower his majesty on the road. The surrounding audience couldn't help but smile when they heard this, but they could see that Pike was really in decline. He couldn't defeat the rich man tonight, and it would be sooner or later for him to withdraw from the world. What's more, the rich man has completely revealed his backing today. With Zalun's support and his generous spending, no one in the world can compete with him. Zalun asked his men to disperse the people around him, turned back to Lu Feng and whispered, "It's time for you to leave." Leave? Lu Feng could never leave. He glanced at Zalun, then looked at Pike and said, "How do you think my friend was molested?" When everyone present heard this, they were about to turn around and leave, but they were all stunned. They looked at Lu Feng in disbelief. Tonight, Lu Feng had given them a performance of what it means to fight with others. Not to mention Pike, even Zalun didn't react. These people had to give him face, but if they really got into trouble and didn't give him face, then they wouldn't give him face. How to calculate it? Ha ha ha, rich man, how do you calculate it? Why don't you let your son touch him too? Pike sneered, "I'll give you face, you just take it easy, you know. We have to settle this matter today." Lu Feng quietly patted the captain with his hand and motioned for him to call Maha. He looked at Pike and said, "Otherwise, you won't be able to leave." "Can't leave? Who can be so loud? I can't leave." This was not said by Pike, but came from the door. Several jeeps were parked next to the police car outside the door. A dozen people were walking among the crowded crowd, and no one dared to block the way. These people are different from gangsters. They carry a murderous aura, and their intuition tells them that these people have killed people before. Lu Feng recognized the tall man at a glance. He was so conspicuous in the crowd. The one at the front was a man in his 30s, with slightly dark skin and a pair of eyes like those of an eagle that made people afraid to look directly at him. Zalun's brows furrowed. He felt that these people did not look like ordinary people, and he was secretly a little wary. Pike was extremely excited when he saw Mujia. He didn't expect Mujia to actually come. This is simply his living god. He said excitedly, "Boss, why are you here?" "Boss." Everyone present was shocked. Pike is already a ceiling-level boss. Facing this man, he actually calls him a boss. Who is the boss of the boss? Everyone present was chattering, as if trying to get meaningful information about this man from the people around them, but they got nothing. The captain had quietly hid behind the crowd, took out his mobile phone and called Maha's entourage. After the call was connected, the captain whispered, "Something happened. Mr. Lu brought Miss Sarami to the bar to relax. You rogue, if your butt was touched, please tell His Highness Maha." The attendant on the other end of the phone was also shocked when he heard this, but Maha was currently busy with another beautiful woman's important matters, so it was not appropriate for him to go in. "Okay, I will definitely tell you." Just as the attendant hung up the phone outside the room rang. "Come in." 5 or 6 people walked in carrying lemonade, towels, and other items. The attendants lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the absurdity. They just whispered about it first. "What?" Maha got angry and slammed the water glass in his hand to the ground, shouting, "Let the security department handle it." If I'm not satisfied with the handling, don't come back to see me. In the bar, everyone felt that what happened tonight was too big, and it had shaken their nerves. They originally thought that it would be rare to see a big guy like Parker, but they didn't expect that there would be something different. Zilun stared at Muja and asked, "Who are you?" "It's time for the police to handle the case. Please don't disturb me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." "You're welcome," Muja snorted disdainfully, took out an ID from his arms, held it directly in front of Zalun's eyes, and said, "You can see clearly with your eyes wide open, you're welcome and let me take a look." Zalun saw the words and chapters on it clearly, and his whole body froze. This matter was beyond his control. "This matter has nothing to do with you anymore, leave it to me." Muja took a step forward, knocked Zilun away, and walked in front of Lu Feng. Their eyes met, and the expression on his face was quite playful. After a long time, the two finally met, and Muja said, "You must really want to see me, right?" "Yes, I've wanted to know who you are since I got off the plane, but it's not important anymore." Lu Feng stared at him. "You have chosen to come out and hang out, why are you still hiding your head and tail?" Muja said, reaching for the mask on Lu Feng's face and taking it off. The mask was torn off, and as his true face was revealed, many people present screamed in surprise. "What's your name? Do you know him?" The person next to him shook his head and said, "I don't know him." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 919. Latest website. Everything that happened tonight challenged the nerves of ordinary people and broke their cognition. Originally, in their eyes, a person of Zalun's level was basically regarded as the king of heaven. But today the king of heaven is here, and it doesn't work. Originally, Pike had given up, but now that Muja is here, don't blame him for being rude. It can only be said that the rich man's life is too bad, and he can feel that the rich man still has a problem with Muja. "This is terrible. You are really looking for death. You really dare to offend anyone. No one can protect you tonight." Pike snorted and said proudly, "You are looking for death, so don't blame me for being ruthless, brother." Facing the scumbag, Lu Feng no longer wanted to deal with a guy like Parker. He stared at him and asked, "You are a licensed person, but you actually do such a thing. Are you surprised?" "I just came out to do these things. Don't worry, I won't kill you." Muja grinned, showing his black teeth, and said, "Just one leg." "What are you doing?" Zilun couldn't help shouting. "What's the matter with you here?" Without saying a word, Muja took out a gun, put it against Kalun's chin, and shouted, "If you say one more word, I'll blow your head off." Everyone present was stunned, secretly guessing the identity of the scumbag. He dared to hold a gun against the director of the Public Security Bureau. This was definitely something ordinary people would not dare to imagine. They have already guessed very closely. In this country, they are the only ones who dare to be so arrogant. Zilun's breathing was trembling. He could be sure that Muja kept his word. To him, this was neither a problem nor a problem. Zilun looked at Lu Feng. He wanted to save him, but it was beyond his ability at this moment. He understood that one person did not accept another person, but he could not accept that that person might never accept him from now on. Disappeared from the earth, never to be seen again in this life, leaving no trace of hope for anyone, only despair. Zilun took a step back, staring at Lu Feng with reluctance. There was only one outcome left, an ending he didn't dare to think about. Everyone present watched Zilun retreat to the door. The people the gangsters, needed to look up to could only retreat sadly at this moment. Muja turned around, looked at Lu Feng, and said, "You have no choice today, and I'm not in the mood to waste time with you. If you think you still want to fight with me, then just give it a try." As soon as he said this, the tall man directly pulled out two pistols, bumped them left and right, and loaded both pistols. They really dared to start a killing spree. On the contrary, if the people on Lu Feng's side dared to fire a single shot, they might even kill their ancestors. Plained. Lu Feng's subordinates have quietly retreated. At this time, what is the difference between a big brother and a big brother? The most important thing is to protect yourself. If an egg touches a stone, who will be hurt? No need to say anything more. Ha 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 ha. Pike smiled very happily. He originally thought about having a big fight, but he tried his best to let Lu Feng take the first action. He didn't expect it to end like this. Rich man, how many humming days have you been out here? Now you're done, Pike said to Lu Feng. I'll give you a chance. As long as you kneel down and kowtow, I'll call an ambulance for you in a while. I'll even call you an ambulance, I'll pay for the ambulance. Lu Feng looked at the arrogant Pike. Perhaps in his eyes, everything was doomed and there was no possibility of the second outcome. Not only him, but everyone present thought so. I'll give you a number of 3. Just keep your legs obediently, or I'll do it myself. Shopkeeper Mu Jia ordered a cigarette, took a long puff and said, 1. 2. Seeing that Lu Feng had not made any move, he raised the gun in his hand, fired a shot into the air, and shouted, last chance. Boom. Everyone at the scene was shocked, but the next second, a man in military uniform rushed in and shouted, who shot? He grabbed an AK-47 with one hand and without saying a word, he pointed it upward. Da-da-da. In an instant, everyone shrank their necks in fear and crouched down quickly. Even Mu Jia was startled and looked back nervously. In this gap, dozens of people in full armor had already rushed in. Oh my God, is this world crazy? Is this a war? I'm really excited tonight. When Lu Feng saw the person coming, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Pike, Mu Jia, and Zailun were all dumbfounded. Why did the military come? And he was fully armed. He came in without saying anything and took a shot first. Everyone at the scene was squatting on the ground, consciously holding their heads in their hands. Parker was already panicking when he saw the person coming, and kept saying in his heart that it is impossible, absolutely impossible, he is a foreigner, and he is also Chinese. If he is American, this scene makes sense. This. An officer leading the team came over and looked at Lu Feng. He knew Lu Feng. Lu Feng was in the village where he went to Sarami last time. He asked, are you okay? Fortunately, there's nothing wrong. I'm sorry to bother you again, Lu Feng said politely. I have the order, so what's the trouble? Where's Miss Sarami? He asked again. I'm here, I'm fine, Sarami said hurriedly. Who touched it? Wright was already panicking and curled up on the ground. His arrogance just now disappeared without a trace. Now he wished he was a sea creature and could hide under the sea. No one spoke. He glanced at everyone present and fixed his gaze on Pike. He looked like a boss and asked, who touched Miss Sarami? Parker felt that his scalp was numb. After being around for so long, it was the first time he felt such tremendous pressure. He wanted to grit his teeth and say nothing, but he heard the sound of the AK changing the magazine. In an instant, Parker made a choice and used pointing at Wright. I am subject to. Da-da-da. The gunfire rang out, and there were already more than a dozen holes in Wright's body. The peripheral nerves in his body were twitching instinctively, and he had made no sound. They kill people so neatly, compared to Lu Feng and the others who have been wasting their time talking here, they are so neat. What do you do? He looked at Mu Jia. At this time, he was like the god of death in this room. As long as someone's name was called, he would go to see the Lord of Hell the next second. Mu Jia was smart and didn't care to think about the background of this woman named Sarami. He hurriedly took out his ID from his pocket and explained, I am from the 9th Army, and now I am assigned abroad. This is my ID. He took the certificate, glanced at it, threw it on the ground, and asked, "You are not in the military camp, you are covered in tattoos, and you still show up here. Do you know what the consequences will be?" I am a special agent and have a mission." "Really, you believe me?" "If you don't believe me, you can go check it out." "I can also make calls now." Muja was anxious. "There are many factions in the army, and they are fighting each other openly and secretly. It is not a matter of a day or two. Even if he is killed today, if it is found out tomorrow that it is true, it will be in vain. Moreover, the things Muja did are behind the scenes. Will the boss really protect him?" Muja thought it was unlikely. On the contrary, if something happened, he would be the first to die. After all, dead people cannot speak. The muzzle of the gun was already pressed against the back. Pike and several others were so scared that they peed their pants. They really had to face life and death. Not to mention how tough men and awesome bastards were. They all had this kind of virtue. Even Lu Feng was afraid. It's a similar situation. Just now, everyone was calm because they knew that the other party didn't dare to shoot rashly. But now it's completely different. "What about you?" He looked at the tall man. "I am also from the 9th Army." Boom. He pulled out the pistol from his waist and killed the tall man on the spot. Parker was already kneeling on the ground and trembling into a ball, with the gun pointed at him. I was wrong, I repent, Director Zalun, I plead guilty and obey the law." Pike raised his head and looked at Zalun like a life-saving straw. "Unfortunately, it's too late." Boom. This is how a generation of heroes ended. Muja knew that no one could save him. He raised his head and looked at Lu Feng, begging, "I beg you, let me go. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I know a lot of things about you, useful information, many companies have approached me, really, please, I kowtow to you." Muse knelt on the ground, his head banging against the ground. Muse, who had been so arrogant a few minutes ago, could only kowtow and beg for mercy. "Can you spare his life?" Lu Feng said, "he has nothing to do with what happened tonight." The muzzles of several people moved away, and then they slaughtered several of Pike's younger brothers. This scene was really unbearable for ordinary people. Sarami had already vomited, and Lu Feng stood there, his whole body was cold, and he was already dead. Maha's anger must be calmed down. Everyone has said that they must be satisfied. They don't want to get an unsatisfactory result when they go back. All the people near the door ran away quietly, killing some of the main personnel. The officer leading the team said to everyone, "Everyone, exit." In an instant, everyone present felt as if they had been granted amnesty, and ran out of the door rolling and crawling, as if they wanted to break out of this hell on earth. "This bar will disappear before dawn tomorrow." He turned around and gave the order to his men. "Yes. Ms. Sarami, please go to the hotel to rest first. We have arranged a safe place for you." The officer made an invitation gesture and said, "Please get in the car." Sarami looked at Lu Feng, who whispered, "Go, this is your destination." She nodded slightly and walked outside. Lu Feng watched her leave. He glanced at the trembling fabric lying on the ground, sweat eroding the clothes, and said, "Can we leave?" "I'm so sorry. Miss Sarami was not protected." "You can leave at any time." Lu Feng raised his foot and kicked Muja and said, "Let's talk after we get out." A group of people walked out of the bar. The originally bustling Pattaya was so quiet tonight that even the breeze was so gentle. Everyone was covered in sweat, as if they had escaped from hell. Lu Feng stared at the scumbag who was left alone and said, "I will give you a chance. If you make up nonsense and lie to me, don't worry, I will also get rid of you. Of course, if you provide something of value, I will give you a sum of money so that you can live a life of peace of mind." Latest website.